Hello everyone, and welcome to the latest edition of ADGM Think. Now, our podcast is where we get behind or into the minds of financial experts and leaders in the field here in our ecosystem. My name is Sarah Cocker, and I'm delighted to be hosting this podcast today. Now, one of the defining moments of COP28 here in the UAE was the unveiling of the Global Climate Financial Centre. And with me to discuss this entity today is Mercedes Vela Monserrate, and she is the CEO, indeed, of the GCFC. So welcome to the show, Mercedes.
It's a pleasure.
I kind of mentioned COP there because, it was such a defining moment, and we obviously got a lot of good outcomes from that during the time here in the UAE. Can you give us a quick snapshot of the financial outcomes that you saw from that?
Sure. So COP28 finance strategy very much looked at one main objective, which was making climate finance available, affordable, and accessible. So in order to fulfill that objective, we looked at an entire strategy that will have a say into the entire ecosystem, starting from the macro level of the economy all the way to your micro levels. So we started looking at your MDB reforms, collaboration with the Ministry of Finance and the G20. We also looked at financial regulation, what constitutes fit-for-purpose regulatory frameworks, but then also markets, both compliance and voluntary carbon markets. And last but not least, your venture capital, your startups, and how to build on that. Now, across all these four pillars, COP28 deliver on key initiatives. So the first one, clearly the UAE consensus, but underpinned by that consensus, we also had the UAE declaration on a global climate finance framework, which basically provides an architecture in terms of how to implement that consensus. We have also seen the establishment of Altera, the 30 billion climate vehicle. But also we've seen a number of key initiatives in the UAE, such as, for example, UAE banks committing to 1 trillion into sustainable finance by 2030, and also financial regulators looking at taxonomies, classification systems, disclosure requirements, and governance requirements in the UAE. And then bringing all these pieces together, we also had the announcement and the establishment of the Global Climate Finance Centre, a COP28 legacy that will aim to bring all these pieces together going forward after COP.
So let's dig in behind the scenes, because a lot of people will see this title, the Global Climate Financial Centre, but you kind of explained the background there, and indeed you were launched on December the 4th, just as we were coming into COP28. So talk us through behind the scenes, and also what's your mandate?
Yeah, sure. So COP28 is a GCFC is a COP28 legacy initiative, right? The Global Climate Finance Centre will be established here in ADGM in Abu Dhabi, and it will be an international, private sector focused think tank that will foster and advise on fit-for-purpose regulatory frameworks. Will serve also as a platform for collaboration between national, international, private and public stakeholders, and we'll also look at raising capacity building in order to increase low carbon, high growth investments. Now, how do we do this? Very grand, ambitious agenda, right?
Yeah, you've got some big names there, I think. Yeah.
So the aim, the way forward will be through three main pillars of work. The first pillar of work, it has to do with regulation, policies, and innovation. In order to be able to invest in climate-related projects, we need to have the right data. We need to understand the taxonomies. We need to have proper governance in place. We need to have fit-for-purpose regulatory frameworks so that we can deploy that capital in an efficient manner. And that's what the GCFC will be doing in collaboration, not only with national, but also international stakeholders.
Yeah, can we talk through some of those big brands that are behind this? Because it really is quite a great stable you've got as partnerships.
Yes, and that brings me to the second pillar, which is partnerships. There is great amount of work going on in the UAE and internationally But the reality is that most of this work is ad hoc and uncoordinated. So again, GCFC brings our key founding members. It's a mixture again between national and international stakeholders, from your ADGM to BlackRock, G Funds, World Bank, just to name a few. But also those will be working with ministries and regulators in the UAE. Very importantly, GCFC will also host the African Green Investment Initiative Secretariat, which was an initiative that was launched during COP28 that brings together 4.5 billion of private and public funding.
You're kind of going to slightly answered my next question there, because you kind of laid out a really good sort of smorgasbord of everything that you're going to be up to and why. But why Abu Dhabi as the global center for all of this? Why was that picked?
Well, Abu Dhabi, in particular ADGM, launched a sustainable finance initiative already 7 years ago almost. That initiative builds on international best practices and very much established Abu Dhabi as a global climate finance hub. Abu Dhabi has come up with the first regulatory framework on sustainable finance in the region. They have also regulated, they are the first regulator in the world to treat carbon credit as a financial instrument and therefore bringing them into a regulated market. They have also established the Abu Dhabi Sustainable Finance Declaration that has now been signed by more than 100 public and private institutions. And we have also seen a number of key activations, such as RACE during Abu Dhabi Finance Week and Abu Dhabi Sustainable Finance Forum during Abu Dhabi Sustainability Week. Essentially, Abu Dhabi, the UAE, has created an entire ecosystem with a diversity of different firms, with the right regulatory frameworks in place, with access to capital, and now through GCFC, with a center of excellence that will bring together all that knowledge and capital in a coordinated manner to really start establishing Abu Dhabi and the UAE as that global climate finance hub.
And it's interesting because I heard a lot on various panels and events that we seem to be getting over that old-fashioned concept that you either make money or you do something for the environment, that hopefully we can do both now. And organizations such as yours will sit right in the middle of that. So what do you say to people that are still, I don't want to say on the fence, hopefully they've moved beyond that now, but how they navigate this new era?
Well, I think there is data already that explains and provide more feedback on this issue. But I guess, and again, going back to the three main objectives of GCFC, which is about making climate finance available, affordable, and accessible. In order to do that, in order to focus on making the world healthier and wealthier at the same time, we need three ingredients. The first one is the right fit-for-purpose regulatory frameworks. What happened with climate finance was that it outpaced financial regulation. What do I mean by that? You have investors looking to put their money into climate finance. However, there was no data. There were no taxonomies. There were no regulation in place. But now we see financial regulators as a whole coming up with specific standards, and something that the UAE is currently looking at, for example, on coming up with a transition taxonomy, a classification system that will tell or will specify what constitutes a climate project. That's one. The other one that you need is capacity building. The financial services sector in particular needs to raise that knowledge, because when we look at climate finance, it's not just finance, it's also science. So bringing the two together. And as we develop the market, clearly now I wouldn't say there's no discussions around whether or not this is profitable. In fact, I would say this is the next investment opportunity of our year.
Now, of course, you've already been doing a lot, so I kind of feel guilty asking you the next question, what's next? But obviously, we're always looking to the future, and who could have imagined how quickly we would have moved in this area, particularly climate tech and all the things that you've highlighted. But GCFC in the next 3 to 5 years, what are you looking at? What are you hoping to achieve?
So the aim in the short term is really to establish the UAE as that credible climate finance hub, through financial regulation, through capacity building, and through partnerships. so that in the long term, the UAE will be able to establish relationships with other jurisdictions, particularly emerging and developing economies, so that we can help them with capacity building, but also implementing those fit-for-purpose regulatory frameworks so that we will be able to increase those low carbon, high growth investments. Very importantly as well, that I've not mentioned, is the whole work around de-risking instruments that GCFC would also be looking at. The idea will be to bring different type of capital from your philanthropic to your concessional to your commercial, so that we can identify and design those risk mitigation tools so that we can increase and scale up bankable projects. And we'll be looking at working with other jurisdictions in order to, again, making climate finance available, affordable and accessible.
So if people are listening to this podcast and are thinking, right, how do we get involved? How do we, bring this into our business? What's your advice to them?
Well, clearly sharing best practices. At the end, that's one of our key pillars. Also getting involved through courses, capacity building, and also our platforms. Clearly through other ADGM activations such as RACE, doing Abu Dhabi Finance Week, and of course, through our channels, both our website and social media channels.
Mercedes, thank you so much for giving us that insight to what looks like a very exciting future indeed. Thanks for joining us today, Mercedes Vela Monserrate.
My pleasure. Thank you very much.